And now we'll see SA 500. As usually, we'll go with the objectives of the auditor first. The objective of the auditor is to design and perform audit procedures in such a way as to enable the auditor to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence to able to draw reasonable conclusions on which basis the auditor's opinion. Okay, what the auditor has to do, auditor has to perform, design and perform audit procedures. Why he has to do that work? Why he has to do audit procedures? To obtain audit evidence. How the audit evidence should be? It should be sufficient and appropriate. It should be sufficient and appropriate. Why it has to be sufficient and appropriate? To draw reasonable conclusions. Why to draw reasonable conclusions? In order to give a reasonable assurance. Okay, that's what the objective of the auditor is, to design and perform audit procedures in order to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence in order to draw reasonable conclusions. Okay, as of to regarding sufficient and appropriate, what does they mean? Sufficient amount of sufficiency with regards to the quantity of something. What the quantity of here is audit evidence. Sufficiency is with regards to the quantity, quantum, amount of. Okay, appropriateness is mostly the quality, relevance to the relevance to the assertion that what you're doing. And audit evidence is a definition of audit evidence. This was mostly given to just for 1 hour before the examination, just to write the MCQs portion and all. It would be helpful for you to write any case-based scenarios also. And it's the information used by auditor to arrive at conclusions on which audit opinion is based. And relevance deals with the logical connection with the purpose of audit procedure and the assertion under consideration. You see, in order to watch or in order to audit the trade papers, what he has to do, he has to do some external confirmations and all. That is, external confirmation is the audit procedures to obtain audit evidence. Assertion is the correctness, checking the correctness of the trade payables. So it has to, there has to be a logical connection in order to, in order doing that. So like doing comparison of the sales and the litigations and all, salaries of the employees, all this doesn't form a logical connection, right? So there has to be some relevance to the audit procedures with regards to the assertions they were trying to. Tests of control are designed to evaluate the operating effectiveness of control. Tests of control is like testing the internal controls of the entity. Why internal controls? Internal controls was such controls that were designed, implemented, and maintained by the management. That's the responsibility of the management to do what? To prevent, detect, and correct material misstatement that would be occurred in the financial statement at assertion level. Assertion level, okay. I want to clear one thing is assertion level and financial statement level is what two different things. Assertion level is that any material misstatement or any kind of misstatement that affect only one particular class of transaction or a one particular disclosure or one particular account balance. Like there were some irregularities with regards to the internal controls for the salaries. Say salaries. For salaries, only the salaries employee benefits column only gets affected. That's at misstatement at assertion level. If not, there were some internal control flaws that would affect the stock valuation or kind of stock valuation or like sales valuation and all. Or there were kind of internal control deficiencies with regards to modifications of the data. They have unauthorized access of like that. They would have their impact on various kinds of accounting balance. For the stock, you have it on opening balance, closing stock, and that would also affect on the profit. So there were a lot of them have been affecting. And if they have unauthorized access to any kind of database by the unauthorized people, they have access to almost all the account balances, right? That's what, so that was at financial statement level. Then it was when the misstatement is affecting on more than one assertion level, it's on financial statement level, okay? And substantive procedures are designed to detect material misstatement at assertion level. Okay, they comprise of tests of details. What are tests of details? It's like checking in details, checking the journal entries, etc. Substantive analytical procedures were mostly comparison, forming the ratios with the financial information and the non-financial information, like rent to the square feet and the number of employees to the salary amount. And with that in mind, we'll just dive into SA 500 auditor shell, what the auditor has to do. When using the information produced by the entity, the auditor shall evaluate the information that is sufficiently reliable for the auditor's purpose. When the auditor, you see, audit evidence, how the audit evidence should be sufficient and appropriate. So it's all about the qualifications of the audit evidence, or the qualities of how the audit evidence has to be. It has to be sufficiently reliable. Okay, in obtaining the audit evidence about the accuracy and the completeness of information, and evaluating whether information is sufficiently precise and detailed for audit purposes. These were the keywords that you have to remember. They have to be sufficiently reliable. If you found a management that a fraud that was made by the management, you the reliability on the audit evidence that you have obtained, or the written representations you have obtained, have create a significant unreliability with regards to the audit evidence. It should not be that. The audit evidence has to be reliable, and it has to be any data. Audit evidence is something, or information or data. Information has to be what? Reliable, it has to be accurate, and it has to be complete, and it has to be sufficiently precise and detailed. This is with regards to numericals, this is with regards to non-numericals. Inconsistency or doubts over reliability. If when the auditor will have a doubt on the reliability of the audit evidence, when the audit evidence obtained from one source is inconsistent with obtained from the another. Okay, when two different sources or for the same audit evidence, the results were different, then it would cast a doubt on reliability, and the auditor doubts over the reliability of the information to be used as an audit evidence, as they were contradictory audit evidence. Corroborative audit evidence is something that support each other. Contradictory, that was opposite. Okay, the auditor shall determine the modifications or additions to the audit procedures, as they were giving a contradictory audit evidence. What the auditor has to do, he has to perform further audit procedures, that is modifications or additions to the audit procedures. It seems simple. Okay? And sufficient appropriate audit evidence. This is the favorite answer, right? Reasonable assurance is obtained when the auditor has obtained sufficient appropriate audit evidence to reduce audit risk to an acceptably low level. Okay, what the auditor has to obtain, he has to obtain reasonable assurance. How he obtains that? By obtaining sufficient appropriate audit evidence. Why he has to do that? To reduce the audit risk. Audit risk is something that you're forming an inappropriate opinion, or to an acceptably low level, and sufficiency and appropriateness are interrelated. Sufficiency is a measure of quantity of the audit evidence, and the quantity is need to be affected by auditor's assessment of the risk of material misstatement. Okay, they're saying that risk of material misstatement is in relation with sufficiency. When the risk of misstatements, which was identified or assessed under SA 315 or higher, the sufficiency, the quantity that the auditor has to obtain the audit evidence also has to be higher. Okay, the quality of such audit evidence, which is higher the quality, less may be required. Obtaining more audit evidence, however, may not compensate its poor quality. They're also talking about the quality. Quality also has to be higher with regards to the risk of material misstatement, but having a poor quality from an you see, audit evidence from a third party was having more weightage and more independent, and the audit evidence that was obtained directly from the auditor has more independence. So in order being that, if the auditor was just inquiring the management with regards to everything, that is of poor quality. How much and all the quantity might be high, it's of a poor quality, it cannot compensate from the high quality. High quality is from independent third parties and auditor obtaining directly from the himself directly. And the reliability of the evidence is influenced by its source. Yeah, that is the source that we are talking about, third party and from the internal organization management, and by its nature. By its nature is oral or written, any kind of. And more assurance is ordinarily obtained from the consistent audit evidence obtained from the different sources or a different nature. Okay, more assurance was obtained when it's obtained from different sources, as we have said, from where it has started. When audit evidence obtained from one source is different or inconsistent with the another, from different sources, we are getting more assurance, that is corroborative audit evidence. Information from sources independent of the entity data you see they are talking about the information have more reliability with regards to independence with regards to entity confirmation from third party analyst reports, etc. And how the audit evidence has to be obtained, it has to be obtained from the risk assessment procedures and further audit procedures contain tests of control, substantive procedures including tests of details, and substantive analytical procedures, which we have discussed prior. And what are the sources of audit evidence, as while dealing with the MCQs and or doing all the questions, what are the sources of audit evidence, how the auditor could obtain audit evidence? Inspection of any documents, observation of any process, external confirmation with regards to uh, confirming balances, and recalculation is recomputation of any kind of balance that was already done by the management. Reperformance is any kind of controls with regards to that was again performed by the auditor. Analytical procedure is just comparison of like financial and non-financial information. That's it. These were the inquiry with regards to a questionnaire, asking questions within entity or outside the entity also. This has to be come for you by hearted. Okay, inspection of documents, observation of process, same thing. Recalculation of any kind of amounts, and reperformance of any procedure. Observation and reperformance are with regards to procedure. External confirmation, balances, analytical procedures, comparison of financial, non-financial, inquiry, any kind of background or any kind of related party transactions, etc. will be going under inquiry. Generalization about the reliability of the auditor. What are some generic words or generalization about the reliability? When the audit evidence is increased when it's obtained from independent source. Reliability of audit evidence generated internally is increased when related controls are effective. First thing, when audit evidence is obtained from internal sources, is have higher weightage. It's more reliable. When it was obtained from internal source, but if the controls were effective, then also it is reliable. Okay. Audit evidence obtained directly by the auditor is reliable. In documentary form is reliable, and original documents is more reliable. Okay, and these were with regards to the generalizations of the reliability of the audit evidence. And while evaluating the objectivity of the management expert, what is objectivity with regards to management expert is management is hiring some expert with regards to valuations of few shares or transaction financial instruments or actuarials, etc. The interest and relationship creating threats like financial interest with regards to the management's expert to that of the entity, and business and personal relationships, provision of other services also like self-review threats. Okay, financial, business or personal or some provision of other services also would evaluate the objectivity of the management expert. And why we have to evaluate the objectivity of the management here, in order to use the work of the management expert. Okay, obtain information regarding competence, capability, and objectivity of the management expert. What we have to evaluate is personal experience and discussion with the expert, and discussion with the others with who are familiar with that expert work, knowledge of expert qualification or any kind of published paper, book, or written by that expert. Personal experience, discussions with whom? With that expert only, and with the others who are familiar with that expert, and the knowledge of the expert and any paper or book that was written by the expert. Okay, while evaluating the appropriateness of the management expert work, how do you evaluate the appropriateness of the work? What are the This is like again a important question with regards to this. Do remember this. Relevance and reasonableness of expert findings and conclusions. And their consistency with the audit evidence and whether appropriately reflected in the financial statements. That is what we have to evaluate. We have to evaluate the relevance and reasonableness of the expert findings and conclusions. Okay, remember this, relevance and reasonableness of findings and conclusions, and how they were reflected in financial statement and how they were inconsistent with the audit evidence. Okay, if the expert work involves any kind of assumptions, the relevance and reasonableness. What's the key hero or key word here, key phrase? Relevance and reasonableness of what findings and conclusion, relevance and reasonableness of the assumptions and methods. If the expert work involves any source data, relevance, completeness, and accuracy of the source data. What we have seen here, something relevant source data, completeness of source data. First one, the audit evidence author shall find that it would be sufficiently reliable if that was accurate, completeness, and sufficiently precise and detailed. The same thing. You see, all the adjectives with regards to any kind of data. This is all data. Data's adjectives were it has to be reliable, accurate, and sufficiently completeness, and the source has to be good. Okay, and that's it. We have completed essay 500.